Welcome to the next session. Don't do it like Joe, all about family, friends, football, and Forex. And today we would like to welcome again our returning guest speaker, Rudolf Elmer. Hi, Rudolf. How are you today? Where are you? How are things going?
Hello, Joe. Yeah, I'm fine so far. Let's see what kind of questions you have and we want to know. I'm very curious.
Yes, I have some questions prepared for you, Rudolf. Now, we had a longer interview 4 weeks ago, which was very successful, very positive feedback. We met in person last week, and we had a nice chat about your happenings. Now, today the topic is, why is offshore so sexy?
Yes. There are many reasons that offshore is so sexy. Put it this way.
Rudolf, one question first for our viewers to understand better what it means onshore and offshore. Could you explain in a language which everybody understands what is onshore and what is offshore?
Offshore, you would consider countries which are by Tax Justice Network qualified or identified as offshore jurisdictions. Basically, they do have a so-called secrecy index, and of the 180 countries in the world, roughly, already about 120 are identified as offshore jurisdictions. So basically, it means it's not something, let's say, as example, you have the British Virgin Islands, you have Jersey, UK, you have the Bahamas, Mauritius, all those countries who actually are not onshore, let's say in Europe or in the United States or in Asia. But even then, you can say in Asia, for instance, Hong Kong is considered a offshore jurisdiction as well. So it's not a clear definition. However, in general, they are independent countries who promote their business for several reasons. Tax reasons is something which is usually said as tax havens. They are identified as tax havens. That you could consider as a offshore jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think it's clearer now. Now to the main topic, Rudolf. So what makes it so sexy for corporates or high net worth individuals to go offshore? Like, I mean, from a banking secrecy perspectives, or what's your view on the secrecy?
There are several reasons for it, but bank secrecy is definitely one. Basically, what I have to say is that all business which is performed offshore, you also can perform it onshore. You don't need to go offshore. So the business in Germany, which goes offshore, it would be possible to perform or do the business as well in Germany. All right, you have some legal reasons. It's a bit more expensive. You have not that secrecy and so on. But basically what it means that what makes offshore so sexy are those reasons, let's say secrecy reasons, that you can hide the beneficial owner, that you can hide the transaction, that you have not a public registrar, for instance, which you can look up who is the owner of a company, who are the directors. You have bearer shares, because bearer shares, the person who owns the bearer shares is actually the person who controls the company. But owning the bearer shares doesn't mean that you're anywhere in a public register. Then you have legal reasons. Legal reasons could be bank secrecy, could be confidentiality law in the Caymans. I'm talking about the Caymans because I worked there for a long time, even so in Mauritius as well. There could be tax reasons, that you have a zero or minimal taxes to pay, or even you can make an agreement with the government not to pay taxes for 25 years, which is even today actual. Then you have regulatory reasons. For instance, the industry is self-regulating. For instance, Switzerland, the monetary authority is self-regulating the industry. And it's known that the banks, the big banks, are the main sponsors of the monetary authority in Switzerland. It's the same thing in the Caymans. Then you do have supervisory reasons, that monetary authorities, people in the monetary authorities, according to my experience, they don't go too much into details. They perform poor or no audits. For instance, an example, in the Caymans, we were audited by the monetary authority. We had a chat with the head of the monetary authority for an hour, 10 minutes about the bank's balance sheet, 50 minutes about sailing.
Wow.
So, yeah. Or and then we had the judicial reasons. For instance, prosecution and courts, they actually protect the financial center. That basically means that investigations are not performed. I came that across several times now in Switzerland because I filed complaints, or in the Caymans, there was recently an issue that the UK wanted to have information about money laundering from a Cayman-based company, and they made that international request. And you need to know, Cayman is an independent colony of still an independent colony of the UK. So the highest court sits in London of the Cayman Islands. But anyhow, they sent that request to the Caymans, and the general attorney of the Cayman Islands said, we don't provide the information. And that was it about money laundering. So even though they had the power, nothing really happened. Then you have political reasons. I mean, the politicians actually do make the laws, and they protect the country, for instance, in respect of coming on a blacklist. Cayman just recently got off the blacklist of the European Union. They changed 20 laws about investment funds, but that was not really a big issue. So those 20 laws which were changed, they were done for political reasons, to get rid of or to get off the list of the EU blacklist. I was very surprised about this issue because the EU knows that the Caymans, there's no public register, there are bearer shares, there are no public information about trusts and so on. I mean, or about the big hedge fund center. I mean, you need to know, in the Cayman Islands, there are about 10,000, 1 and 4 zeros, hedge funds domiciled. It's the biggest hedge fund center of the world, and the money is definitely not in the Cayman Islands, but the profit, obviously, in this tax-free regime. Then there are organizational reasons. For instance, I learned that you could install a server with cable and wireless. That's the telecommunication in Cayman or Bermuda or Bahamas even. with the telecommunication company and then redirect not only your emails through those jurisdictions, but also telephone calls. And you do that sort of thing to say, look, to the tax investigator, there is an organization in the Cayman Islands or in Bermuda. We have a telephone number there. You can call it. There are emails coming out from there. There is a subsidiary down there, definitely. As a matter of fact, there's only the server which sits in with telecommunication of cable and wireless. That's it. And the entire operation is managed out of Zurich in that case. I know. So there are several reasons for going offshore, and obviously there is no really a need or a must to go offshore, in my view, but those reasons justify to save a lot of money, and for multinationals and ultra high net individuals, and even perform dubious businesses, just like financing terrorism. And that's also possible. And I saw that is possible to use those offshore jurisdictions to finance terrorism.
Okay, understood. Well, I'm really surprised that these structures are still maintained. But is it now illegal to open an offshore account for a Swiss company or not?
For a Swiss company, you don't really open up an account. You open up a company or set up a company, let's say in British Virgin Islands or Jersey or wherever. No, that's not illegal. Definitely not. It's legal in those jurisdictions, and as long as from a Swiss point of view you don't abuse the organization, then it's all legal. I mean, that's definitely the case. But the question is really, is it legitimate to cheat society with those structures about paying the taxes which should be paid?
Okay, so the main purpose it could lead to think that these corporates open offshore accounts to avoid paying taxes. Is that the majority of it, or is that maybe other reasons as well? To let me get the right word, to diversify the jurisdictional risk. Like, I mean, when you are only operating in Switzerland, yep, and you may want to be diversified, one corporate in Asia, in Hong Kong, one in the Cayman, one in the US. Is that not a valid reason for you, or is that?
Not really, not really. If it's a risk management issue, definitely not. I mean, this is simply a red herring, which they say they do it for that sort of thing. But on the other hand, I have to be clear as well. I mean, if you work in the United States and you're a dentist and you make a small mistake, then the client goes and files a complaint for, let's say, $20 million, and he might be successful and destroys your entire well-being. So there are reasons for it which you could say, okay, that's legitimate in the case of that dentist, for instance. But generally speaking, no.
Okay. And but if I understand correctly, a Swiss corporate, when she has, or the corporate has an offshore entity, why does Switzerland lose out on tax on this one?
Yeah, let's talk about hedge funds, because that's going to be big money at what's really happening is that the incentive fee of a hedge fund, which could be 10 to 20%, as 10 to 20%, if you say you have a hedge fund of 2 billion and you make a profit of 100 million, then on this 100 million, there's an incentive fee of 20%, let's say 20 million. Huh?
Okay.
Now, you have the company, the investment manager company is a Cayman-based company, and that's the investment manager, which, for instance, I was as an investment manager for hedge fund. But I wasn't able to manage a hedge fund. I mean, you have daily trades, hundreds or whatever, and so I had an investment advisory agreement with London, one with New York, and the deals were done on the desks in New York and in London, as well the risk management. I paid them a small advisory fee, but the big money, the 20 million, the investment management company in the Caymans earned that money tax-free.
I
so
see.
That's an example that using those structures to avoid paying big taxes.
I see. I see. So because
very simple example, but that's the same thing if you can do that with trusts or with companies. It's a hedge fund. Actually, that's one of the reasons why so many hedge funds, as I said, 10,000 are domiciled in the Cayman Islands.
Okay. Okay. So as the initial idea is paying tax where the operations are done, this is basically not really the case here, because by administrative purposes, they are setting the fund up in Cayman.
Yeah.
But the operations are still done out of London or somewhere else.
Absolutely. And not only the operations, the key point is not really the operations, it's a part of it, but the decision-making process. Where do you make the decisions? That's basically the place where you have to pay the taxes.
I see. Okay.
Because
okay.
That's the management.
Okay, I understand.
Real
Okay.
management.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, good. So I think it got a lot clearer now about this difference between on and offshore. And you mentioned the legal reasons, the tax reasons, the regulatory reasons, supervisory reasons. You actually gave a good input. From my side, I don't have any further questions. Do you would like to add something, Rudolf?
That's wonderful thing. And I just read recently in the Financial Times. And there is Mr. Don Seymour, who was the founder of the Cayman Islands' largest fiduciary service company called DMS. And he's a director of 560 hedge funds. 560. How do you manage 560 hedge funds as a director? I mean, either you are a genius or even more. But his explanation was wonderful. I mean, he explained the case in the Financial Times and saying, it's just like being a doctor, working on your own. You only can service about 400 clients a year. But the same doctor in a hospital can service 4,000 patients a year. And basically what he says, he is one of those doctors.
I see. So I understood you correctly. You blow the whistle. There should be a bit more investigated, that the society doesn't lose so much tax.
Yeah, it should be, put it this way, investigated. I mean, what the EU did with taking off the Cayman Islands off the blacklist is simply a joke. It's the political issue, the political power who actually should request that, that for instance, that bearer shares are not allowed anymore, that you have to have public register, and so on. But in this case, with the EU and the Cayman Islands, I really feel that the EU politicians were advised by tax cheaters, call it the big fours or multinationals,
wow,
to take Cayman off the blacklist.
All right, so that makes me a bit sad because I'm as well in that industry since long, and when we had so much work to do on KYC, AML, origin of funds, beneficial owners, each detail from every single small company in Switzerland or Europe needs to be basically investigated. On the other hand, you have it on a big scale where actually everybody looks to the side.
Yeah, that's definitely it's a sad story, and it's basically a big burden, or going to even a bigger burden for civil society in the long run.
Yeah. Okay, I see that similar, Rudolf. So thank you very much for giving your input. And I think I'll call you again if I have any interesting topics in finance. It's very yeah, very good input. Thank you and have a nice day. Okay.
All right. Bye, Joe. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Rudolf.